A chilling 911 call from a teenager trapped in his own car would set off a chain of events that expose a system's catastrophic failures. This is the tragic story of Kyle Plush. On April 10, 2018, 16-year-old Kyle Plush was at his high school in Cincinnati, Ohio, getting ready for a tennis match. He drove a 2004 Honda Odyssey minivan, and as he reached into the back to grab his tennis gear, something went terribly wrong. The third row seat, which he was leaning over, suddenly flipped up and pinned him. The mechanism was powerful, folding him in half, crushing his chest, and making it nearly impossible to breathe. Trapped and fighting for his life, Kyle managed to use his phone's voice activation to call 911. The time was 3:14 p.m. His first words to the dispatcher were faint and desperate. "Help? I'm trapped inside my van. I'm at the Seven Hills school parking lot. Send help." He couldn't hear the dispatcher well, and the connection was weak. The call was confusing. The dispatcher, Amber Smith, later said she thought it might be a prank. She struggled to hear his location, typing Seven Hills into the system but not the full address. Kyle, with his phone just out of reach, kept repeating, "I'm gonna die here." The call lasted nearly 3 minutes before it disconnected. Despite the confusion, a police unit was dispatched, but the information was incomplete. The officers arrived at the sprawling Seven Hills campus, which has multiple parking lots. They saw the Honda Odyssey, but didn't see anyone inside. Believing it was a false alarm or that the person had left, they marked the call as no one found and cleared the scene just 11 minutes after arriving. They never even got out of their car. Meanwhile, Kyle was still pinned, his life slipping away. As the pressure on his chest intensified, he was slowly being suffocated by what's called positional asphyxia, but he didn't give up. 16 minutes after his first call ended, at 3:33 p.m., he managed to call 911 again. This time, he was connected to a different dispatcher. His voice was even weaker. "This is not a joke. I am trapped inside my gold Honda Odyssey van. I'm in the back. I'm gonna die soon." He gave his location again, describing the vehicle. But this second, more desperate plea for help never reached the officers on the ground. A computer glitch in the dispatch center prevented the new information from being relayed to the police cruiser's terminal. The dispatcher also didn't verbally update the officers who were already leaving the scene. The system, designed to save lives, had failed at every critical point. The second call ended with the sound of Kyle gasping and groaning. It was the last anyone would hear from him. Hours went by. Kyle's parents grew worried when he didn't come home from his tennis match. They started calling his friends and family. His mother used a Find My Phone app, which pinged his location to the Seven Hills school parking lot. His father, Ron Plush, raced to the school. He found the gold Honda Odyssey and made the horrific discovery. He found his son, lifeless, still pinned by the seat. It was nearly 9 p.m., almost 6 hours after Kyle's first call for help. The aftermath was a storm of grief, anger, and questions. How could this happen? An investigation revealed a series of devastating failures. The first dispatcher failed to gather and enter critical location details. The police officers didn't conduct a thorough search. A technical glitch prevented the second call's vital information from being transmitted. It was a perfect storm of human error and system malfunction. The city of Cincinnati was forced to confront the flaws in its emergency response system. The 911 call center was understaffed and used outdated technology. Dispatcher Amber Smith had a history of performance issues and later resigned. The investigation led to promises of reform, better training, updated software, and increased staffing for the 911 center. A task force was created to implement these changes. Named the Plush validated reforms, the Honda Odyssey minivan also came under scrutiny. The model had a known issue with its third-row seats, though a recall had been issued years earlier for a different problem. Kyle's death brought renewed attention to vehicle safety design, but for the Plush family, these changes came too late. They lost their son in the most unimaginable way, not in a car crash, but trapped by his own car, just yards away from safety, while his calls for help went unanswered. They channeled their grief into advocacy, creating the Kyle Plush Foundation to promote technology and training improvements for 911 centers nationwide. Their goal is to ensure no other family has to endure such a preventable tragedy. Kyle's story is a heartbreaking reminder of the importance of every second in an emergency. It's a testament to a young man's will to live, and a stark warning about the systems we rely on to protect us. His final, haunting words echo as a call to action for a better, more reliable emergency response network for everyone. Some calls don't sound like panic at first. They sound like someone trying to stay professional, while their instincts are screaming that something is about to happen. The most terrifying part isn't always what you hear it is what you realize you can stop. And when the person on the phone says, "He won't let me in," you understand the emergency isn't coming. It's already sealed behind a locked door. The sound of children's laughter is usually a sign of joy, a sound that brightens any room. But for social worker Elizabeth, that sound now brings a chilling echo of a day that shattered her world and the lives of two innocent boys. This is a story that forces us to look into the abyss, to question the very systems we trust to protect the vulnerable. It is a story that begins with a routine supervised visit and ends in an unimaginable act of violence. This isn't just a case file. It's a testament to a promise broken, a tragedy that unfolded in plain sight, and a warning that we must never forget. Our story takes place in Tacoma, Washington, a city nestled in the Pacific Northwest. Here, a young mother was fighting to keep her children, while their father, Josh Powell, was the sole person of interest in her mysterious disappearance. The mother was Susan Powell, and her story had already gripped the nation. She vanished in 2009, leaving behind her two sons, Charlie, who was 7, and Braden, who was 5. The investigation immediately zeroed in on her husband, Josh. His alibi was bizarre, to say the least. He claimed he had taken his two young sons on a spontaneous, midnight camping trip in the freezing Utah desert. The very night Susan disappeared, no one believed him, especially not Susan's family, and certainly not the police. But with no body and no direct evidence, charges couldn't be filed. This left the children in a precarious situation. For 2 years, they remained in Josh's care. But as the investigation into Susan's disappearance stalled and public pressure mounted, the courts finally intervened. A judge ruled that the boys were not safe with their father, placing them in the custody of their maternal grandparents, Chuck and Judy Cox. Josh was granted supervised visits, a lifeline to his sons, but one that came with strict conditions. These visits were to be a safe, neutral space for the boys to maintain a relationship with their father, always under the watchful eye of a social worker. This is where Elizabeth Griffin Hall enters the story. She was the professional tasked with overseeing these delicate reunions, a buffer between a grieving family and a man under a dark cloud of suspicion. The day was February 5, 2012. It was a Sunday, gray and damp, typical for a Washington winter. Elizabeth drove Charlie and Braden to their father's rented home for their scheduled visit. She'd done this before. It was routine. The boys, like most kids, were excited to see their dad. They had toys in their hands, ready to play. As they pulled into the driveway, Elizabeth felt the usual mix of professional caution and hope that the visit would go smoothly. The boys bounded out of the car and ran towards the front door. Josh opened it, and in that fleeting moment, everything seemed normal. He greeted his sons, a seemingly ordinary father welcoming his children home, but the normality shattered in an instant. As Charlie and Braden ran inside, Josh quickly moved to block Elizabeth from following. She heard him say, "I've got a surprise for them." Then, he slammed the door in her face and locked it. A cold dread washed over Elizabeth. This wasn't right. This was a violation of the court order, a massive red flag. She pounded on the door, yelling Josh's name, her voice filled with a rising panic. There was no response. She circled the house, peering into windows, her heart hammering against her ribs. She called her supervisor, her voice trembling as she reported the terrifying turn of events. "He's locked me out. He has the kids. Call 911. Inside the house, a scene of unimaginable horror was about to unfold. Josh Powell, the man who was supposed to protect his children, had meticulously planned their final moments. He had prepared for this day. Just moments after locking Elizabeth out, a faint smell of gasoline began to seep from the house. Elizabeth smelled it. Her frantic calls to 911 grew more desperate. She could hear one of the boys, Charlie, crying inside. The dispatcher on the line tried to keep her calm, but how could anyone be calm? Every second that ticked by was another second. The boys were trapped with a man who had finally snapped. She could hear him on the phone with his sister, a chillingly calm farewell. "I'm sorry," he said. "Goodbye." Then, the world exploded. A massive fireball erupted from the house, the force of the blast knocking Elizabeth back. The windows shattered, and flames devoured the structure with terrifying speed. The surprise Josh had for his sons wasn't a toy or a game. It was a can of gasoline and a hatchet. In his final, monstrous act, he attacked his own children before setting the house ablaze, ensuring none of them would make it out alive. The home became a funeral pyre, a monument to a father's ultimate betrayal. Firefighters and police arrived within minutes, but it was too late. The flames were too intense. There was nothing they could do. The house, the boys, and their father were consumed by the inferno. In the aftermath, the investigation revealed the full, sickening extent of Josh Powell's premeditation. He had sent emails to his attorney and family, saying he couldn't live without his boys. He had donated their toys to charity days before the fire. He had withdrawn all his money from the bank. This was not a spontaneous act of rage. It was a calculated, evil plan. He chose to murder his own children rather than risk losing them to Susan's family, the people who truly loved them. The final autopsy reports were devastating. They confirmed that Charlie and Braden had suffered chop injuries before the fire, likely from a hatchet found at the scene. Josh Powell had not only taken their lives, he had made their last moments on Earth a living hell. For Elizabeth, the social worker, the trauma was profound. She was the last person to see the boys alive, the one who heard their final cries. She was hailed as a hero for her quick actions, for doing everything she possibly could in an impossible situation. But the weight of that day would stay with her forever. In an interview, her voice choked with emotion. She recalled, "I know that if I had gotten in, I would be dead. I know it, but I would have. I would have died to save them." Her words are a haunting reminder of the impossible situations we ask our social workers to navigate, often with little support and facing unimaginable dangers. She was a witness to pure evil, and the scars of that day are a burden she will always carry. The tragedy of Charlie and Braden Powell sent shockwaves through the Child Protective Services system. It raised difficult questions. Could this have been prevented? Were there signs that were missed? Josh Powell had been denied custody, but the system still allowed him access, believing that supervised contact was safe. This case became a brutal lesson in the limitations of that system. It showed that even with precautions in place, a determined and disturbed individual can find a way to inflict horrific harm. It forced a national conversation about how we assess risk, how we protect children from potentially dangerous parents, and the immense psychological toll these cases take on the frontline workers trying to keep them safe. The story of Susan Powell and her sons Charlie and Braden is a trilogy of tragedies. A missing mother, presumed murdered by her husband, and two little boys, caught in the crossfire, whose lives were extinguished by the very person who should have been their ultimate protector. Their grandparents, Chuck and Judy Cox, lost their daughter and then their grandsons in the most brutal way imaginable. Their fight for justice for Susan continues, but the loss of the boys is a wound that will never heal. Their home, once filled with the hope of raising their grandsons, became a place of profound grief. This case is a dark chapter in the annals of true crime. It's a story without a happy ending, without a final courtroom victory. Josh Powell escaped justice for Susan's murder by taking his own life, and in his final act of cowardice, he stole the futures of his two innocent sons. It leaves us with a sense of profound sadness and anger. It reminds us that the monsters we fear are always strangers in the dark. Sometimes, they are the people we are supposed to trust the most. The legacy of Charlie and Braden is a call to action, to be more vigilant, to listen to the whispers of concern before they become screams of horror, and to reform our systems to better protect the most vulnerable among us. We owe it to their memory to never forget. Thank you for listening.
It was a cold, late night in November 2021. For 76-year-old Loretta Pickard, it was supposed to be just another quiet evening at her home in Orient, Ohio. But as darkness fell, a nightmare began to unfold. A fire, insidious and swift, started to consume her house, turning her sanctuary into a deadly trap. The events that followed would raise disturbing questions about the very system designed to protect us in our most desperate moments. Loretta was alone, her mobility limited by age. As smoke and flames filled her home, she did what anyone would do. She called 911. The call connected, a faint glimmer of hope in the suffocating darkness. She told the dispatcher her address, her voice strained with panic, explaining she was disabled and couldn't get out. The fire was growing, and time was running out. For 6 long, terrifying minutes, Loretta pleaded for help. The dispatcher, a new recruit on the job, repeatedly asked for her address, even though Loretta had already provided it. The confusion and delay on the line were agonizing. "Please hurry," Loretta begged, her words punctuated by coughing as smoke filled her lungs. She described the flames, the heat, the terror of being trapped. Each second that ticked by was a second closer to tragedy. Tragically, help did not arrive in time. The dispatcher's inexperience and the subsequent confusion led to a fatal delay. Firefighters were eventually dispatched, but by the time they reached Loretta's home, the flames had engulfed the structure. They found her body in the aftermath, a silent testament to a system that had failed her when she needed it most. The 911 call is a chilling record of Loretta Pickard's final moments. It's a difficult listen, filled with fear, desperation, and ultimately, resignation. But it's a story that must be told. Her call for help became an echo in a void, a plea that seemed to go unanswered. The dispatcher's handling of the call immediately came under scrutiny. Why the repeated questions? Why the confusion over the address? Was this a case of human error or a symptom of a larger, systemic problem? An investigation was launched. It was revealed that the dispatcher was indeed new and had not completed their full training. They were reportedly overwhelmed and did not follow established protocols for a fire emergency with a trapped individual. For instance, standard procedure dictates keeping the caller on the line, providing reassurance and gathering crucial information until help arrives. Instead, the call was marred by repetitive, unproductive questions that wasted precious time. The Pickaway County Sheriff's Office, which oversees the dispatch center, faced intense criticism. The public and Loretta's family demanded answers. How could something like this happen? The investigation found that there were significant gaps in training and supervision at the dispatch center. The incident exposed a vulnerability in the emergency response system that most of us take for granted. We assume that when we call 911, we will be met with competence and efficiency. Loretta Pickard's story shattered that assumption for many. The dispatcher involved was placed on administrative leave and later resigned. While this addressed the immediate human error, it didn't solve the underlying issues. Loretta's family filed a lawsuit, not just for financial compensation, but to force meaningful change. They wanted to ensure that no other family would have to endure the same preventable tragedy. Their goal was to improve training standards, implement better oversight, and ultimately, make the 911 system more reliable for everyone. The lawsuit alleged negligence, highlighting the dispatcher's failure to follow basic procedures. For example, the dispatcher never asked Loretta which part of the house she was in, information that could have been vital for firefighters. They also failed to provide any instructions or comfort, leaving Loretta to face her final moments in terror and isolation. The family's legal team argued that with proper training and a more experienced response, Loretta might still be alive today. This case is a stark reminder of the immense pressure and responsibility that falls on 911 dispatchers. They are the first point of contact in life or death situations. Their ability to remain calm, process information quickly, and make critical decisions can literally be the difference between life and death. It's a role that requires extensive training, psychological resilience, and unwavering support from the agencies they work for. The fallout from Loretta's death prompted a reevaluation of emergency dispatch services in Pickaway County and beyond. It sparked a conversation about funding for public safety, the importance of continuous training, and the need for mental health support for first responders who deal with traumatic events daily. Are dispatchers being given the tools they need to succeed? Are agencies investing enough in the people who are our first line of defense? Loretta Pickard wasn't just a statistic or a headline. She was a mother, a grandmother, a beloved member of her community. Her friends and family remember her as a vibrant woman who, despite her physical limitations, had a strong spirit. Her home was filled with memories, and her life was rich with connections. The fire took all of that away, not just from her, but from everyone who loved her. Her death leaves a void that can never be filled. What can we learn from this tragedy? First, it underscores the importance of accountability. When systems fail, it is crucial to conduct thorough investigations and hold the responsible parties accountable, not for the sake of punishment, but for the sake of improvement. Second, it highlights the need for investment in our emergency services. This includes better pay, better training, and better support for the people who answer our calls for help. The story of Loretta Pickard is a difficult one to hear, but it is one that we must not forget. It serves as a powerful call to action. We must demand more from our public safety systems. We must advocate for the changes necessary to prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again. Loretta's voice, pleading for help on that 911 call, must not be the last word. It must be the beginning of a new chapter, one where every call for help is answered with the urgency, compassion, and competence that every human life deserves. The legal battle continued for months, with Loretta's family steadfast in their pursuit of justice. They wanted to ensure her legacy was one of change, not just tragedy. They argued that the county had a responsibility to its citizens, a responsibility that was not met on that cold November night. The case became a symbol of a larger struggle for improving emergency response across the country. Ultimately, a settlement was reached. While the details remained private, the family expressed hope that the outcome would lead to tangible improvements in the Pickaway County Dispatch Center. The sheriff's office has since reported that they have revised their training protocols and implemented new quality assurance measures to better monitor dispatcher performance. They have committed to ensuring their team is better equipped to handle high-stress situations. But the question remains, is it enough? Loretta Pickard's story is a haunting reminder that the systems we rely on are only as strong as the people and protocols within them. Her final, desperate pleas for help should resonate with all of us, a somber call to ensure that our first responders are given the best possible training and support. Her memory demands that we do better. We owe it to Loretta, and to every person who may one day find themselves in a moment of crisis, to build an emergency response system that is truly worthy of our trust. Thank you for watching.